What's up, friends? Welcome to SPDM TV. My name is Mike, part of the SPDM crew, and I watch a lot of TV. We talk about various TV topics, reviews, and general appreciation of TV past and new. You could follow me on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Serialized at MLHilty2452 to see what all I'm watching. This week, we are talking about Saved by the Bell, the joy of the 90s, just a seminal show in, I feel like, most millennials' life when it comes to broadcast television. So the premise of the show is that it is a close-knit group of six friends get through their teens together while attending Bayside High School in Palisades, California. Not Indiana, none of that or
No.
anything like that. It's, Palisades, California. It was on from 1989 to 1992, and there have been a lot of different variations and reboots and a lot of behind the scenes drama and a Lifetime movie and such about some of the other stuff that was going on. So I brought back the mint chip mama herself, Stacey Wallenstein, to come back and talk about Saved by the Bell. So, Stacey, welcome back. How's it going?
Thank you so much. This is so exciting. I think that it's taken 30 years, 40 years to just get to this moment, and I am so ready.
All right. So, first question right off the bat is how'd you get into Saved by the Bell in the first place?
So the funny thing is, I don't have an exact memory of how it started. I think I was just an 11-year-old who turned on the TV Saturday morning, and all of a sudden there were people that looked just a couple years older than me that were pretty, that were getting into all these hijinks and doing all kinds of funny things. And I was like, wait, what? This isn't a cartoon on a Saturday morning, and this is made for me. I'm going to keep watching, and then I'm going to watch every Saturday morning because it was episodic television and you didn't record it. You just woke up and watched it.
Yeah,
And if you missed it, you had to wait for a repeat episode on the network.
that's
And yeah, and I think that it is a love affair that just started from there. And I mean, I think to this day, if like you said, I think if you talk to anyone that's a millennial or a end of the Gen Xers or whatever generation it is in the late 70s, early 80s, it's just a show that is such a pivotal part of our childhoods, collective childhoods.
Mhm.
And I think even just watching the cast move on to other things, and I've met a few of them and I have some random connections to a few of them, and it's just such a part of one's youth that it just holds such a warm place in my heart.
So, kind of similar to you, it was a big part of my childhood, and I didn't catch this on NBC that
Okay.
much. I caught this on TBS. This was on
Ah,
syndication on TBS, and
nice.
there were two blocks of Saved by the Bell that came on TBS when I started watching it. The first was at six o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock in the morning, which I'm getting ready for school time,
Yep.
which makes sense. But then there was a block from like 4 to 5
Hmm.
right after school.
Yep.
So you
Very smart marketing, guys.
bookmark your day
Yep.
with Saved by the Bell, which I always thought was a fun idea. And it's interesting because there are some things in Saved by the Bell where there's kind of like a throughput with a story. So, for example, Zach and
Yes.
Kelly's relationship, that was kind of something that there were like ups and downs with that. There were some things that came out from like graduation and like talking about your future, but for the most part, a lot of the episodes are episodic. So they're kind of just like this.
Episodic and then never mentioned again, like Slater's sister or Jesse's brother.
Nope. None of these ever get mentioned again. The consistency is all over the place with this
Yes.
show. And I guess we should probably start at the very beginning because
Yes.
we've the it's interesting because the way this works is that this started kind of as I mentioned before, this started out as a show in Indiana called Good Morning Miss Bliss. So,
Mhm.
Stacey, do you want to like explain like what that was and what happened with it?
Sure. So I think in starting or in continuing with the whole kind of, wait, what?
Mm,
What? So some of these six characters that go on to be the official Saved by the Bell characters live in Indiana, including Zach and Jesse and Screech. And I believe that's it. And then they have some other friends like Mikey, who we never see
It
again.
just yeah.
Disappears. Witness relocation program. So anyway, it's this group of kids that live in Indiana, and Miss Bliss is their teacher, who's played by Haley Mills, who at that point was quite famous. People might know her from Parent Trap, which was a classic movie, as well as other things. So she was kind of, I mean, I'm assuming at the time it was presented as like a vehicle for her to get into sitcom television, maybe. I'm guessing. And it was a bunch of unknown kids. And then Mr. Belding was there as well. And then all of a sudden, when the clock switches from March 18th, 1989 to August 20th, 1989, all of a sudden, Mr. Belding, Zach, Jesse, and Screech are in this beautiful school in California with these new friends, Slater and Kelly and Lisa Turtle. And then no mention of it ever. They're never like, hey, do you remember when we all collectively moved from Indiana to California? It just starts and nobody asks, nobody looks back. Just like when some of them leave and then some of them come back and some of them are at graduation and some of them aren't. And I think that that's the beauty of the 90s and of
Mhm.
this show. Because now, much like how we all at our age talk about, I'm so glad I didn't go to college and high school when people had phones and the internet. Can you imagine how this show would have gotten ripped in half for continuity and for all of these things?
Absolutely. Well, even so, look, I know you didn't want to talk about it, but the Tory episodes,
We could
for
talk about
example.
the Tory years, but
The,
within our voices.
yeah, because do you know the story behind why they incorporated Tory into the show and where Kelly and Jesse were?
I mean, I'm sure at some point in the last 20 years I knew it, but enlighten me because I don't remember it now.
Contract disputes. They
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
they they were in a contract disputes and they decided not to reprise their roles and they just went on like normal as if they weren't there, and it was allegedly like their senior year and Tori
Yes,
just kind of showed up.
yes.
So she was there to kind of plug the hole that Jesse and Kelly left behind, even though
Yes.
you can't plug that hole.
No.
What is
Although
happening?
speaking of that, depending on what this podcast is rated, Jesse did go to Las Vegas and might have plugged some holes there.
Oh,
Can I go
oh,
there?
I see
Yes,
what you did
yes,
there. I see
yes,
what you did
yes.
there.
Whereas
Uh,
Kelly went on to kind of hang out with Brenda and Brandon and had some avocado holes there herself, right?
oh, yeah,
But
that's
go on.
oh,
Because they did
well,
come back for graduation, I think, right?
they did, and they Jesse also came back for Zach and Kelly's wedding eventually. Oh,
Mhm.
also spoilers for a show that's like 30 years old. So
I feel like if you don't know that Zach and Kelly got married, that's on you, not us. But
yeah,
I feel like we need to dedicate some time, and if you will allow me, we can make some parallels to when Donna and David got married in that final episode as well. Also spoiling 90210 that ended in, the 90s. But
yeah, yep. All right. So so like some of the continuity was all over the place. And
yes,
to kind of put a pin in some of these other things. So we're not really going to be talking much about college years, new class, and the reboot because why? Why
right.
would we? Because okay, here's one thing that I will give the college years a little bit of credit for. It bring it bring more eyes on or it brought more eyes on Bob Golick, which cool. That's fun.
Yeah,
But I did like the theme song,
that's true.
I guess. And there's a trivia question at the place that I host
Hmm.
trivia a couple months ago
Ooh,
that
fun.
said, what was the name of the college that they went to for Saved by the Bell the college years?
California University.
Like it was like Caltech or something like that.
Caltech's real, I think. I
Yeah,
think it wasn't it CU, California University? Isn't that
maybe.
the fake college that everyone goes through in California?
Right. So
I
some
There's some merit. I feel like we can say, I actually said to my husband before he left, I refuse to talk about the college years. And he goes, why? I like the college years. And I'm like, I don't know if
why?
you're my Valentine anymore. I don't know how I
Like
feel about that.
what
And then I was like, all right, I find Alex incredibly annoying, but I think there's I like was it Lax? What was the
last
professor's name? Professor Lasky? Lasky?
Lasky, the
Lasky.
one that,
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
plot point there was him
Yep.
and Kelly got together,
Yep.
which that felt a little icky, but hey,
It's kind of like when you revisit Never Been Kissed, and as an adult, you're like, wait a second, this is not
there's
okay.
something
Yeah.
very problematic
Yes.
about this movie.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, I think that we should open and close with there is some merit to the college years. I do remember the very intense scene when they were about to go to semester at sea and Zach came to profess his love. There is merit there getting us to the wedding, which we do need to give credit to. But
Mhm.
other than that, I think most of it was garbage.
Yep. New class. Just didn't connect
Ugh.
with the kids. Just
Mm.
not really, not really my jam. And the reboot was capitalizing on the streaming wars, trying to gather as much content as possible and trying to find something where people could actually like watch. So I I thought the reboot was fine. Like, would I watch it again? Probably not, but
Yeah.
whatever. It's all good.
Mm.
So that is our let's briefly mention their existence. Let's acknowledge them. Let's thank them for their service. And then let's just move on to Saved by the Bell proper, which is initially what we want to talk about anyways,
Yes.
because that is
However, I have one more question.
yes.
Where does Malibu Sands fall on that spectrum? I don't mean to put you on the spot with such a serious question. Considering it was part of the seasons, the OG California seasons 1 through 4, do we
Yeah.
go with it?
Why don't we briefly mention it? Because the so season 4, episode 22 has like an entire like clip show of
Yes.
that, and then also the one where Jesse's father gets married
That's on my list.
at Palm Desert. Yeah,
Yep. I
not
have a personal connection to that story. Yes.
oh okay.
Yes. Which we'll
So
get to. Just to
so
build intrigue, stay tuned to listen and find out how.
so the Malibu Sands episodes was interesting because it kind of gives me High School Musical 2 vibes. It's like, hey, what are we doing during the summer? And
Mm-hmm.
of course they had to have jobs at this cushy resort that everybody had to work at.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, like I thought it was cool. The Stacey as a love interest for Zach was kind of interesting because they were opposite. She was
Mm-hmm.
no nonsense. She,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Tough New
wanted to,
York girl.
yeah, sure. Mr. Carosi, the manager who is the voice of Pumbaa, I think Pumbaa or Timon?
Oh,
I don't know.
you're right.
So he was a fun way to fill the Mr. Belding
Yeah.
void during
He was an
those
excellent
episodes.
caricature of an adult, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, it always bummed me out when I was watching an episode and then they just do that wide shot of the beach. I was like, oh, it's a Malibu Sands episode.
And then
That's
there was Brad. But yes. I also
ew.
think that I was laughing because when I was reviewing the episode guide before and I saw that episode with the clips, I was like, this is like when a teacher shows a movie the day before vacation. I feel like what happens in the writer's room where they all like, wow, that Emmy party was exhausting last night. So for the episode this week, let's just do clips from what we did already.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's it's interesting. I
I think that's
not my
enough.
favorite, not my favorite. There's some cool moments. Like I will give them credit. The moment where Zach and Stacy finally get together and it's the 4th of July and they kiss under the fireworks.
Mhm,
That was cute. I
mhm,
will give them that, but
mhm, mhm,
overall not very memorable. And
mhm,
again, just completely shattering all these norms where it's like what happened to all these people?
mhm.
Why, how come we never mention these people ever again?
Or
I
Zach's convertible that he bought from Mr. Carosi.
that
Again,
wasn't
maybe they all moved to Indiana and then never were heard from again.
I mean, that wasn't the same convertible that he got into a drunk driving accident in,
No, it
so
wasn't. No,
I
it wasn't.
I
Maybe the sheets they wore, though, for that toga party they took from the Malibu Sands. We don't know. There was never any behind the scenes on that one.
I don't know. I don't
I
know.
think
This is a
we've
good
said
question.
enough. I think that we've said enough.
Okay.
I think yes.
Your your Jesse's father's wedding connection
Yes.
though. Let's hear it.
Well, do we want to go in episode order or should we jump right into that? It's really not that
Let,
exciting. I'm making it out to be exciting.
let's go episode order
Okay.
then. That's
Okay.
fine. So,
So I think starting with episode 1, and I'm not going one by one, but I just want to speak about a very, very incredible dance called the Sprain that I believe was done in episode 1. And why this is important is there is a road in New York called the Sprain. And
Mm.
every time I'm on it, somehow my foot involuntarily does Lisa's dance. And I'm lucky enough to be married to someone who shares my obsession with all of these shows. And both of us can't drive on this road without mentioning episode 1, season 1 of Saved by the Bell.
So,
So this could be like a bucket list trip for you, maybe. It's a lovely
yeah,
highway.
yeah, bucket list for sure. I will definitely add it. So, a couple things about this episode. One, Casey Kasem, who, boy, for anybody who grew up in the '90s and the '80s, Casey Kasem was the guy.
Yeah, it was
He
a big deal.
was, a very prominent DJ. This isn't his first appearance, or this will not be his only appearance on Saved by the Bell. There's one other one that I'm hoping maybe is on your list, but I could be wrong. But
Mhm.
it's one that I will definitely bring up if you
Okay,
do not. So
fair.
so there's that. We get introduced to like a lot of the prime players in this new iteration of Saved by the Bell. We get introduced to the Max, which is
Hmm.
great hangout place, and that's fun. I always thought that the Max was one of like the greatest restaurants ever, and I was like, when I've got family in California, and when I was younger, I was like, we got to go to the Max. And then when someone told me it wasn't real, I was like, oh,
They're like, we'll take you to it though.
that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not disappointed or upset or anything like that. It's funny because at some point throughout the course of the show, most of the characters worked at the Max at some point, very like even if it was briefly. But there was also one person who worked at the Max that he was on for a little while and then just never showed up again, and that's Max. Nobody, whatever happened to Max? He's the
He wasn't woven in, no?
No, he was the magician
Yeah.
who was the waiter, and
Eh.
after a while he was on the show, and I think he jumped off like midway through season 1. He was in 21 episodes.
Oh, okay.
uh
21's respectable.
21 is respectable. uh but oh, he just shows up at random times. So
Yeah.
most of
Probably.
the episodes in season 1, he shows up in 3 episodes in season 2. Oh, those are archive foot. Okay. And then 2 episodes in season 4.
Yeah.
So
I feel
there's
like
that.
he just raised the level of cheese when he came on, right? Like in
Absolutely.
already a very large chunk of cheese, he just
Mm.
raised that cheese right up.
He was also in the reboot. He was in 5 episodes of the reboot as well.
Good for
So
Mr. Max getting some work. Look at that.
yeah, good for him, right? So yes, that was a great episode. Great way to introduce everybody. The sprain, that's a deep cut. So
Mhm.
that's a nice touch. So
Mhm.
great, great pilot for this particular group of episodes. Re-
Dancing.
Rewatching some of these episodes, I forget how young they look in
Oh
that
yeah.
first season.
Oh yeah.
And then they grow up and they don't look like teenagers anymore.
Yep.
And that's hilarious, but also that's kind of funny as
Yeah.
well. So
I think that's part of it. So on my list, unless you have anything more to say about the sprain and
no,
the beginning of the second beginning of Saved by the Bell. So I would like to jump to season 1, episode 11, Buddy Bands.
but oh,
Are you a Love Cuff or are you a Buddy Band fan?
uh,
What's
buddy bands, very much buddy bands, because love cuff just seems problematic to say at a high school, but hey, it is what it is.
But it
Um,
was the 90s. Nobody was dirty because they was no internet.
exactly. Uh, I
But
feel
anyway, if
like
you have anything in between, please feel free to discuss.
this episode is peak Zach Morris.
Yep.
Just so I've got a story really quick. So my my college, when the week of Thanksgiving we had off. So there were in later years in college, I had a job. So I would sometimes have to stay for Thanksgiving break because I would need to work on Black Friday because I worked at a Sears. Sears.
Oh, Sears. Okay.
Yeah, it's
That's sad.
a little sad, but there was one place I stayed where my buddy, his name was Matt Stevens. He had a fish, and he asked me if I could feed it,
Okay.
and I forgot, and the fish died. So I felt horrible. So what I did was that I took a picture of that fish, tried to find a fish that looked exactly like it, and I replaced it, hoping that he nobody would notice. And of course, they noticed immediately. It's like, this fish is different. What happened to it? And I eventually just told them, it's like, hey, I didn't feed the fish. It died. I'm so very sorry about that. And I kind of just left it at that. And they all said, it's like, this is some Zach Morris level of shit that you're trying to pull
100%. Oh
right
yeah.
now. And I was like, yeah, I
Yep.
know. Like,
That is absolutely an episode of a television show. Yep.
I didn't feel very good about it, but hey, I
It's a
will.
great story all these years later.
Yeah. So, but all of this to say again, just Zach Morris just scheming at his very,
Yes.
very best. And what, which one were you? Were you Buddy Bands or Love Cuff?
I feel like I'm buddy bands, but I also can appreciate the innovation of coming up with an equal, similar competitor in the market to teach the children about competitive business practices.
Yeah. So this is a capitalism
Right.
episode. They're
Totally a capitalism episode.
very
Uh,
nice.
So I want to say, because you're talking about scheming, I have my DVD set of Saved by the Bell seasons 1 and 2 open.
Mm,
And episode 2, of course, is the Lisa card. And where I don't want to talk about the overspending, I will talk from Zach Morris scheming and how it was just so funny how he had this absurd run over the school. I would like to talk about where he has the remote control to open and close all of the lockers so he could show all of Lisa's clothes to try to sell them to the other high school students to pay back her dad. So that I
mhm.
thought as well was a lovely scene.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just something that, you know,
Closing them.
Zach, who is not exactly known for his school aptitude, apparently just knows how to get stuff, had the greatest cell phone on the face of the planet as
Oh,
well.
yes.
Just
Oh, yes.
just gotta love that. This show is aggressively 90s AF, and I love
Oh,
it.
yeah.
It's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so great, from the hairstyles to the fashion to the
Mhm,
technology, everything. I loved
mhm.
it so much. I would have loved to have seen what Saved by the Bell would have done if all of these kids got to discover things like the internet or
Oh, yeah.
technology, but whatever. It's
Yeah.
all good.
Yeah.
So
Except the cell phone that he had, which was the size of a watermelon, was like the height of technology. Because you're like, whoa, these kids are rich. He has a cell phone in school. It's
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
that's oh
Right.
what we were all striving for
And
in
can you imagine if cell phones were still that size? Your kids wouldn't be able to sneak them into class. They would just look like everyone had some gigantic plastic box in their pocket.
I mean, counterpoint to that, nobody would be caught dead with that cell phone, and it would
True.
only be used for one thing, to call somebody. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
You're not doing social media stuff, you're not, playing a game, you're not texting your friends. So, and nobody would be caught dead with that in school. So, like, I joke with my oldest daughter who really wants a cell phone right now. She's 7, so she's not getting one. Do you hear that, Gwen? You're not getting a cell phone
You're
yet.
not getting a phone.
Um, but she is. I showed her an old flip phone that I had, and
Mhm.
she's like, "What is this? What am I supposed to do with this?" I'm like, well,
Yeah. Make a phone call on your phone.
you
Yes.
gotta start somewhere, and I gotta
Mhm.
build enough trust to see if you can actually
Yep.
handle a smartphone. So, but anyways,
Yeah. So
with
wait, I just want to mention something about that because since you are of the age that watched this show on TBS and not on NBC, I will point out that when I did get my first cell phone, which was in the mid 90s, it was a phone that was to stay in my glove compartment in case there was an emergency, where it was $25 a month plus tax for 30 minutes of airtime and free after 9 p.m. So it was maybe half the size of the Zach Morris phone, which was still 3 times the size of any phone now, but it was the coolest thing in the world to have. And the fact that even though it looked like a tank, much like laptops did back then, the fact that this technology was available, I was afraid to use it because it was like $150 million a minute if you were over those 30 minutes.
Mhm.
But it's just funny to think of the evolution of cell phones that most of the people our age would think of a cell phone, they would think of the Zach Morris cell phone, but then you forget now because cell phones, I mean, even just the idea that making a long distance call back then you had to pay for, you had to have a separate phone carrier on your landline to make a long distance call.
Right.
And you would call your friends and relatives after certain peak evening hours ended because then it would only be, 25 cents a minute instead of 50 cents a minute. So,
Mhm.
people would call grandma after 9 o'clock. So I think that's just, I think when we look back and make fun of these things, it's easy now and the technology has soared. But then to take a step back and think that, like, imagine if you were the only kid in your high school and you had a cell phone, regardless of what it looked like, how cool you would feel and how cool people would think you are, right?
Right. I would agree with that because my first cell phone, it was a Nokia,
Yep.
blue Nokia that you could play Snake on.
Yep.
And then
Oh God.
I remember when texting started to become a thing, and in order to yeah, like just you were able to spell out certain words, none of the just
Yep.
oh the joys of
Yep.
that. But kind of similar to minutes, text, those were
Yeah.
those were
Yes.
capped as well. It's like, hey, your package only allowed for like 250 text messages. And boy,
Yep.
the joys of that. And now nowadays they're like, we don't give a shit how many
Yeah.
minutes
Yeah.
or text you use. Like it's all
Yep.
about data now. And
Yep.
oh, simpler times, right?
Simpler
And
times.
and if you were
Absolutely.
with AT&T or Singular Wireless, you
Hmm.
get those rollover minutes as well. And
Singular. So when Singular came to New York in 2001, I ran there and I got a phone and I had a grandfathered in plan. Singular was bought by MCI, then it was bought by AT&T, and it wasn't until my daughter got a cell phone a couple years ago that I finally gave up my grandfathered in plan because it was so incredible because they were breaking into the New York market, and every time I would go to like get something or get it fixed, they'd be like, "I bet I could get you a better plan." And I'm like, "Bet." And they'd look and they'd like, "Don't ever touch this plan." And then eventually we had to switch into a family plan and that really hurt. It was such a part of me.
oh, I remember also because when my wife and I got married and we eventually moved plans, I had to give up an old grandfather plan as well.
Yes.
And the main thing that I had to give up was my unlimited data because oh,
Yes. Yes. Right. And you don't even understand the problems of today's marriages of marrying your cellular plans to save $10, right? These
yeah,
are not problems that our grandparents dealt with.
no,
They were
there
busy
were.
with wars, not cell phone plans.
I mean, if you think about it, there were cell phone wars, I guess. No,
But we
no,
digress. We
yeah,
we digress. We
we w
digress.
let's get back to Saved by the
Yeah.
Bell. So,
So let's
um,
talk about, do you have any other ones from season one that you want to discuss? I
So
mean,
so a couple in the first season that I thought were a lot of fun. So right at the very start, you see the budding rivalry between Zach and Slater. And for me, the I think one episode that kind of encapsulates that the best is season 1, episode 6, Aloha Slater, where
absolutely.
he there, you know, Slater is an army brat, so he had to move around a lot, so he didn't get to make a lot of friends. So when there is a potential for Slater to move to, anyways, so there's an opportunity for Slater to move with his dad to Hawaii. And Zach is like, I'm gonna take full advantage of this. So
Bye.
does a lot of different things to try to like encourage him to like, hey, you got to go. Again, this is just peak Zach Morris
Yep.
at its very best. So I did like that episode, and then I will give a shout out to the episode season 1, episode 3, The Gift, where Screech, who we'd be remiss to say that like, look, Dustin Diamond kind of took an interesting path after Saved by the Bell.
Did you read his autobiography?
I did not.
I did.
And any
And
highlights or anything that you were like,
you just
oh,
feel
I've
bad. I think when he died, I read it. I seem to read biographies once the person dies. So I think
hmm,
that it's sad because you're like, oh, you kind of, like you were about to say, you kind of took a negative pivot. Sorry.
yeah. Well, yeah, I think negative pivot kind of puts it lightly because lots of choices were made that were like, oh, interesting. So,
Yeah.
but when you're typecasted like that
Yep.
and you play this role that is like pretty much defined who you are for
Yep.
the most part, yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
sucks. So he has passed away. It's been what, 5 years since he's passed away? Like,
I'm not sure. Something like
so
that.
something like that. So, rest in peace to Dustin
Yes.
Diamond, because like I remember when I got a text notification from a news outlet as like
Mhm.
Saved by the Bell star Dustin Diamond is diagnosed with like stage 4
Yeah.
cancer. It's like, oh, you're
Yeah.
you're not going to be around very
Toast.
long, and that
Yeah.
sucks.
Well,
So
I hope at least for a few decades he could be the Zach Morris in the sky, right?
yeah, yeah, there we go. So the episode where he gets struck by lightning and he has the ability to quote see the future, I I always thought that was fun.
My
That
husband said I would put that one on my list. I didn't.
but
I disagreed, but yes.
so yeah, those were two in between the pilot and the friendship business episode that you've mentioned.
Mhm.
So
And Cream
uh
for a Day was good. Turned everyone's face maroon. I mean, that's enough of a mention of that one.
yeah, other than that, the last episode of the season, the Prank Wars
Mm,
episode, I thought that was fun as a
mm.
boy during this time. Pranks were all the rage, so I
Yeah.
will give them credit for that.
And
So
Screech's birthday, I just want to make a quick mention of the bust of Elvis, right? I don't think we need any more than that.
right, yeah, I would have to
Hound
agree.
Dog. Hound Dog. I hope he reunited with Hound Dog.
Oh, very nice. So, all right,
All right. Do we move on to season two?
let's move on to season 2. Let's
Well,
do it.
since today is Valentine's Day, I think we should pay quite the homage to Zach and Kelly's prom and how her wonderful father in defense lost his job. The true love of their union come through in strong colors.
Well, this was a moment where it's like, Zach, you need to step up, because
Mm,
Zach does not have the most sterling reputation when it comes to doing something nice for anybody without selfish gain. And granted, yes, this was for selfish gain because this was for Kelly's heart, because him and him and Slater were vying for Kelly, even though, guys, Lisa and Jesse, they are two lovely individuals that you could have gone after as well, but you
yeah,
didn't.
yeah.
So I thought that this was really nice that Zach wanted to do this for Kelly. I love the part that she gets flustered in
Hmm.
her bedrooms, like, I need to go wash my hair. It's like, oh, drop in California. Like, nope. It's like,
Yep, yep.
hmm. So this
Yeah.
was a cute episode, and also, it's an interesting way also to bookmark their relationship, because
Hmm.
the prom or just
Hmm.
any school dance is just a very important part of their relationship. So
Hmm.
this is the episode where they get together and then eventually they, break up at a dance as well, to, Jesse and Slater singing "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You," which is just
Beautiful.
beautiful, beautiful rendition of that
Yeah.
song. Very aggressive 90s song as well.
Yes.
But
Yes. Also,
so,
you could just feel the culmination of Zach from bringing that automatic cardboard cutout of her that he has rigged on a remote control down to finally taking her to a dance and having their moment.
right, that was beautiful, just lovely stuff there. So, any other thoughts on the prom episode?
You know what? It's funny. I was thinking about this morning, and that Zach is seen as this, like, kind of crazy hotshot guy, but then you realize that he really does like her so much, and the fact that he does that all is just so kind, right? And
Mhm.
like, it actually was a really nice character development aspect for him. But I just thought it's a nice episode because it shows you also that you don't need to buy an expensive dress to have a meaningful evening with somebody that you have a crush on.
Right, right.
Big messages again. Big messages.
Where would you rank? So we've got a lot of different couples throughout the course
Hmm.
of Saved by the Bell. And if we're talking proper couples that lasted more than one episode, so no hookups like Jesse and Zach that one episode, or
Oh,
Lisa and Zach that one
no.
episode. But if we're talking, let's say Zach and Kelly, Jesse Slater, and let's go Violet and Screech.
I knew you were
Because,
going to say that.
well, I mean, who, like, you can't say Lisa and Screech because, you
No.
know, like,
No.
that whole dynamic was always problematic to me, but it wasn't
Right.
until I was older I was like, dude, no means no. Like,
Right.
come on, man.
Right.
But again, the 90s
Right.
where
I mean, I would say that Zach and Kelly, much like Brenda and Dylan, much like Romeo and Juliet, are just couples that should be etched in stone into history. What about
Mhm.
you?
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's it's Zach and Kelly, because Zach
Yeah,
and Kelly are the only couple that just kind of make it throughout the
yeah.
course of the show. And even when they broke up, there was always an element of will they, won't they? And then even when Kelly, very briefly, we'll talk about when Kelly showed up at in the college years, like, yeah, they're getting back together.
Hmm.
They have to at some point.
Now, what do you think of breakup song "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You" versus "Losing My Religion"? And for those who may not know, if you don't know, stop listening. Just kidding. That's what Brenda and Dylan broke up to. I know that's a tough one. We might need to have an episode just on that
I
and how they
just
don't have rights to "Losing My Religion" and the syndications.
Yeah, that's
You'll
a
have to get back to me on that one.
yeah, I have to get back to you.
You're gonna have to workshop that out.
You did not prep me for that question, and
That was an unfair. I'm
I
sorry.
I now am just like short circuiting because it's like, oh God, which one is
Mm-mm.
there? So
With or without grunions, that's a tough conversation.
right.
Okay. All right. So we're on episode two. I mean, we're on season two. Now, again, I would like to do a big jump, but it's a very important jump to what we call season two, episode nine, Jesse's Song, which I'm so excited to talk about. I'm so excited to talk about. I'm
You're
not at all
so
scared.
you're so excited. You're so excited for this. So
Bold.
this interesting episode, to say the
Okay.
least. And this felt like the 90s, 80s, 90s, and even like into the 70s, they always had occasionally those episodes on a very special episode of Saved by the Bell, where it had kind of an important lesson to this, because they had a couple of these throughout the course of the show. They had one on dope. They had
Oh,
one
that's on my list.
they
Johnny
had one
Carson.
on drunk driving, and they had one on caffeine pills, which didn't realize that caffeine pills was the staggering thing that but whatever. So
Again, no
um
internet.
yeah, no internet, so we
What else
gotta
would they do?
gotta go somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think for me, one of the favorite parts of this, the girls are in a girl group called Hot Sunday.
1, 2, 3, bend. 1, 2, 3, stretch.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's that. Oh, where do we begin? I'll Stacey, I cede the floor to you. Go ahead. Where to begin?
So I think that this episode is probably the most spoken about and lovingly mocked episode. Would you agree?
I would probably agree with
So,
that.
yes. So, just to give a synopsis, in case you don't know, Jessie, who is a straight A student, is very stressed about a test that she has to take and keeps falling asleep because she's studying really late after her and her two gal pals start a girl band and have to have intense tryouts wearing very, very bright lycra athleisure before athleisure was a thing, which in fact means spandex leggings and leotards, very high thighed leotards.
Mhm.
And they are working and working and working to make this music video the best they can. And she just is robbed of all her time studying. So, how is this poor teenage girl going to stay awake? Oh, she found caffeine pills, which I'm assuming were readily available back then, and she starts taking them and everything goes south from there. It takes a dangerous pivot where she learns the reaction that her young teenage body has to these pills, and it culminates in this very dramatic moment where Zach confronts her and she's so excited, she's so scared
Here.
because she can't control herself. And this is just meme gold before there is even a meme or an internet to have a meme. And this is just an episode that teaches you that you need to pace yourself in high school. And it's excellent to even say to someone who doesn't know what you're talking about, like when my daughter has to study and I go, "Don't stay up so late that you need caffeine pills." And she goes, "God, mom, you're so cringe." And it's just the moment we share together. Yes. Also,
That
this is not to be confused with Brian Fate, which is a later episode where they have the Zack attack. They really just had so much fame in their short years in California. Good thing they moved from Indiana.
we
No
are
fame in
going
Indiana. Hmm.
we are going to like, if you weren't going to bring up the Zack Attack episode, I sure as hell was, because
Would I be qualified to be on this show right now if I wasn't going to bring up the Zack Attack episode?
yes, absolutely you would be. So this episode also, it kind of shows the dichotomy specifically of Zach, because Zach is the one that's like trying to get them to, be part of this band, but he's the one that's there for Jesse when she
Best
is
friend.
struggling the most. So
Mhm.
that's one thing that I will give this show a lot of credit for, is that Zach and Jesse have known each other a long time, allegedly, even when, Zach lived in Indiana and Jesse was nowhere to be found. But apparently they've been friends for a long time and neighbors. So I always thought that that was cool that they would occasionally, sneak into each other's rooms and just hang out. That was always really sweet about their relationship.
Was
So
Jesse not in Miss Bliss? I thought Jesse was in Miss Bliss. No?
I thought Lisa was in Miss Bliss.
Oh, we're gonna have to go to the internet on this one. All right, you keep talking. I'm gonna look.
So the fact that Zach was there during that whole experience, I thought that that was really nice of him to do, and kind of shows like, hey, you're not just kind of a little shit throughout the course of this whole season, or this whole series rather. You do genuinely have a heart when somebody really needs help. So I will give him a lot of credit for that.
You are correct, by the way. Jesse Spano was not on the original Good Morning Miss Bliss, and also it was a Disney Channel show, which I did not remember. So do you remember when the Disney Channel was like the biggest deal in the world and you were like, please, parents, please pay the extra money on my 30 channel cable so I can have the Disney Channel?
I remember, and I remember, like, for me, Disney Channel was Kids Incorporated and MMC, like New School Mickey Mouse Club, that has launched thousands, or not thousands, but like dozens of like huge
Yeah,
careers.
yeah, yeah.
I
You're right. It was Lisa, Zach, Lisa, Screech, Mr. Belding. Yep,
so I
icon.
it's all good. I Quick story about Mickey Mouse Club. They released an album and they did a tour around Targets in the US, and they were autographing
Okay.
stuff. And me and my sister, we got the album. We, I
Was this
think
like
we,
Carrie Russell or was this like Brittany and Justin? Like, give us a time frame. A
so this
little bit of
was,
Gosling.
so the person that the two people I remember the most was Tony DeLuca and JC
Okay.
Chazé.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
the rest, the girls, I think there was Jennifer and then there was a Rhonda. Those were the
Okay.
two prominent female singers in that group. But all the other ones I don't remember, but those are the four that I was like, oh my God, I'm meeting them. And that was my first brush with celebrity. And yeah,
Okay.
so fun times. But
Mall tour. Do the mall tours even still happen anymore?
I'm sure they did.
Do
Yeah.
they? Okay.
Back when malls were a thing and not,
Right. That's what I'm saying now. Like,
big.
are malls still big enough of a thing that they would have these moments for these teenagers to like wait online in a crazy mob just so they can get an autograph of somebody? I feel like that doesn't
That's
exist anymore, right?
probably not as often anymore,
Right?
because I know we've got two malls around here,
Hmm.
and they
Right?
both have undergone a lot of change over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So one is turning into an outdoor space. So like
Us.
all the indoor shops are closed, and then they're just slowly but surely evolving most of that stuff to the
Yep.
to an outside outdoor space. The other one doesn't it's still an indoor space, but a lot of the things are dedicated more to services. So we've got
Mm.
like a bunch of radio stations
Oh,
that
that's
are there
interesting.
now. We got a lot of doctors in there.
Mm.
They're
In the
opening up.
mall?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What? That's
I
funny.
Yeah, it's interesting, but
Yeah.
you know,
We have a mall similar. I wonder if it's bought by the same company as by you guys, where it's been a mall for a million years and they've updated it and made it prettier. And then all the stores are leaving and now they're making it, they just closed it like a week ago and they're making it an outdoor space. But it's interesting. And I'm going to digress again to talk about technology. So back then, when we were teenagers, right, there was no internet, which we keep harping on, but there was no accessibility to these worship celebrities for a teenager besides like Teen Beat magazine, which was obviously a,
big deal.
magazine that
Yeah.
came in the mail or you bought at the store, or watching on television or watching an interview or seeing a movie or a radio show, right? There
Yep.
was no Instagram where you could follow the person talking about their life. And, it was a very contrived way that you saw any of these people. And the only access point for somebody to meet a celebrity was to see them in concert or to go to a mall. And I think that when you watch interviews about any of these characters that were teenagers in the 90s, they talk about, flying around the world and having, stops at these different places and just being mobbed by teenagers, and how they were so scared that, they go to Japan and there's like a mob of 8 million people. And
Mhm.
that's something that doesn't happen now,
No.
and it's just interesting, because if you're a teenager now and you want to learn what, whoever the character is that's big at the time, you go on their Instagram page, Zac Efron or whoever it is, and you see Zac Efron is, out doing all kinds of things, and it's his personal story being told. Whereas back then, it was all probably run by a studio and all run
Yep.
tightly by PR people. And you didn't know if they liked, something. It was just so I feel like even the way that teenagers are fed celebrity information and the accessibility point to them is completely different from when we were growing up as now, right?
I would have to agree with that because you're right. The magazine back then was a huge way
Yeah.
to get the word out with stuff like that. And then even newspapers
Mm-hmm.
also were a big deal. But kind of to digress on your digress. So my oldest daughter, she wants to go see a movie
Mm-hmm.
sometime. So I, look it up on my phone. And I told her that, what was the way that we used to have to get movie times? We
Mm-hmm.
used to have to call a phone number and you just cycle through until you got the movie time that you needed. And also, there was nothing there that said, oh, this is sold out. So you
Yep.
show up and the movie's
Yep.
sold out. So you either needed to pivot right then and there,
Yep.
or you had to go to a payphone, call your mom, and have her come get you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was telling my kids about this too. Similarly, we were buying tickets for something over December break. And I said, and I say this every time I buy the tickets on my app and I pick up my seats and I pay for it and it's done. And I say, when I was younger, we would have to go to the theater a half hour before, or an hour if it was popular, wait online, buy your ticket, then wait online to get into the theater, be there early enough that if you were with a group of people, you could all sit together. And then if you weren't, then you'd be stuck sitting in the front. And I feel like we talked about this last time too,
We did.
in
Yeah.
that just like selling tickets online revolutionized the way people can go to the movies. And it's not even talking about like reclining seats and how now it's a whole different experience, but even just, we were talking about, well, back then, could they have at least sold, ticket seat numbers so you could have done it? And I was like, no, because then the person would have had to keep track of how many people are sitting where. And, it just, there was no way to do it without people self-selecting. And it's just such a different experience now that you could just show up 5 minutes before and know you're in F6, F7, and F8 and just go sit down.
Yep. Boy, what a time to be alive, right?
Yes.
So, did you have anything else about the Jesse Song episode, which it is a meme to death. It is kind of a little bit of a joke now,
Mm-hmm.
but also
Mm-hmm.
as a kid watching that, I was genuinely concerned about
Mm-hmm.
Jesse. I'm not gonna lie.
Did it stop you from taking caffeine pills?
It did. It
Then
did.
there you go. Then it was effective
It
piece of marketing.
it did its job, and I didn't even realize caffeine pills were a thing.
Nope.
And that was caffeine pills were something because when we were in school, like I don't know about you because I feel like it's a nationwide program, but they had a program called Dare
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
they taught people to just say no because it's
Yeah.
that simple, right?
Yeah.
Just say no to drugs and alcohol. And I remember wondering, how come they're not talking about caffeine pills? They're talking about cigarettes. I think cigarettes are gross, but what
Mm-hmm.
about caffeine pills, which sound really appealing? So why
Mm-hmm.
aren't they teaching us about this?
Right.
And I just got a giant eye roll from the cop that was our dare instructor. And she was like, listen, just shut up and go back to your
Let's
desk.
hold this to Johnny Dakota. Stop talking. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
that's fine.
So now to ask you a personal question, when you're standing at the supermarket or any checkout aisle and you see those new caffeinated shot things, does it make you go back to this place? Does it make you go back to Hot Sunday?
I mean, yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
it's I am
Do you think
going
those
to
are like the today's caffeine pills?
I'm gonna be vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
with you for a second.
Mm-hmm.
This episode is part of the reason why I don't do energy drinks
I
either.
love that. That's amazing.
I am just there are certain episodes of TV that, and I'm being like kind of partially serious with
Yeah.
this, that they they kind of have that effect on you. And I remember one time that one of my cousins was taking caffeine pills so that he could stay up to study.
Hmm.
And because he was also in a band, he was a drummer, and I was like, "Why are you taking those? Like,
Yeah.
are you okay? Is everything okay?" And he was like, "Shut up. I'm fine." Because he was
Right.
like, I was maybe like 10 or something like
Mhm.
that, and he was 18, and he was like, "I got it. It's fine." And I don't know. I always got genuinely concerned when
Yeah.
I ever saw caffeine pills, and it just never something that really appealed to me
Yeah.
either because of
I
this
mean,
episode.
yeah. I think also like the age that we were when these shows, and I think that you and I probably watched it at parallel ages, just at different times.
Yeah.
And I think when you're younger and you see something said by, I mean, look, we live in a world right now of celebrity influencers, right? So this is like when you're younger, you're impressionable by the people that you look up to. And when we were tweens watching this show, these are the people we looked up to. And there were messages in these shows. And, the 80s and 90s, we spoke about Full House before. I mean, think about like the theme music coming on at the end or whatever, the this is the motto of the show, the meat of the show episode. These shows all had some sort of message, not Saved by the Bell as much, but there were some messaging in these shows to like have the tweens that were watching them take them away, right? And I think that when you're watching them when you're still young and impressionable, the messages that they're trying to get through, even if they're done in a funny way, get through. I mean, we keep mentioning the Johnny Dakota episode, which we'll get to, but like that to me was a really big deal, right? Because
Mhm.
you're young and you're like, whoa, these are older teenagers, and I'm in elementary school or middle school, and these kids are doing something wrong, then telling me it's wrong and telling me what happens if you do it. Like, I don't want to do that. So I
Mhm.
think I think that we joke because the show is funny and because it's caricatured now, but like, it also was a really big message that like don't do that, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that I agree with you in the sense that we both mock it, and it's something that has like a real message that probably I'm gonna guess that you're not the only one that had that reaction. um, and I feel like I never thought about doing caffeine pills before, but that episode probably would have sealed the deal on having me never do it if I ever thought of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I will give the show credit for that
Yeah.
because, it's something that why put something like that in a show if there was not some form of awareness that the creators thought was needed for this particular group of or for this audience.
Yeah.
So I give it a lot of credit for that. And
Yeah.
granted, the sitcom not always the best avenue for these heavier topics
Yeah.
because try to incorporate comedic elements in this, which this definitely did because a lot of sitcoms at the time did that like because this was a laugh track show as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when the laugh track would come up, it's like okay, I'm supposed to laugh, and then this part didn't really have a laugh track. And it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be upset about this. So, and it worked. It was effective. I will give them that.
So I looked something up and I want to kind of mention, kind of along the lines of this, that it made me think about it. Brandon Tartikoff. So Brandon Tartikoff, who was the head of NBC for much of the 90s, or actually he stopped in 1991, it says, but he also did Punky Brewster. And when talking about messages that are coming through in these shows that are for kids, but with these stronger messages, when you said that, it made me think of when was he there? Did he look over Saved by the Bell also? And he was. And I want to say that he was yet again in Johnny Dakota. But I think that, and I don't know if he deserves the credit, but I'm going to give it to him because I don't know anything better. I think that he added this nice element, or maybe I don't know if he had anything to do with this or not, but I think that there was this direction at that time to maybe make the shows a little bit meatier to help these tweens and teens understand these things. But the last thing I want to say about this, and then if you want we can move on, is speaking of caffeine pills, one of the best gifts my husband ever gave me, and this is not a video recording, so you can see this, but everyone else can't. I am using for my coffee, which is not a caffeine pill, but it is caffeine, a mug of a drawing of Jessie crying that says, I'm so excited, I'm so excited, I'm so scared. And my husband surprised me with this for a holiday once. And I laughed so hard when I saw it that my kids thought that I went bonkers. And it to this day is one of my favorite gifts that I've ever received.
Yeah, that one is, like I think this does get unfairly mocked
Hmm.
sometimes, but hey, it's still effective. It's
Yeah.
still an important episode. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this is IMDb's top rated Saved by the
Yep.
Bell episode. So
Hmm.
there is something to be said about that as
Yep.
well.
I agree. All right, let's move on.
Okay.
So I would jump to episode 15, Zack Attack, otherwise known as the Zack tapes. But if you have anything to say of any other shows between that, let me know.
The only one that I wanted to point out, so there is an episode, season 2, episode 13, and this is on IMDb's list. So if they don't exactly match up, I apologize about that. The Running Zack episode. So
Mm,
the 90s were
mm,
not exactly the most culturally sensitive
no,
time.
no.
I mean, we're still not in a culturally sensitive time, but the this one, even growing up, this was a little weird to
Yes.
me. Like I get it, but it was a choice.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily like I would like to think that if the creators and even the guy who plays Zach would look back at that and be like, I think I want a mulligan
Yeah.
for that one.
I think that also falls under the headline that we were talking about of like Slater's sister and Jesse's brother, where it came up once. It was the whole focus of the episode, and then it disappeared into thin
Just
air, never to be spoke of again.
yeah, that happened all the time. So yeah, that one's a bit interesting. But also it's funny because Slater was a wrestler.
Hmm.
He wrestled, that was his thing. He played football as well.
Hmm.
The only mention of Zach running track. Like I don't think we get very many episodes where he ran track. That was not
Yeah.
consistent at all. But hey,
Hmm.
whatever. It is
Maybe
what
he
it
did
is.
it back in Indiana before he moved to high school.
It is possible, it would make a lot of sense for that to be a
Yep.
thing. So, um,
Okay, we've spoken about running Zach.
let's just leave it at that.
Okay,
Let's get to your episode next,
the Zack attack.
the Zack attack.
And it was Brian Fate just running past the garage where they were practicing. And the rest, as they say, is history.
This is the other Casey Kasem episode that I was alluding to earlier. Boy, okay. Which one are you? Friends Forever or Thought We'd Always Be Together? Or I think the song's Did We Ever Have a Chance?
Didn't
I don't
we
know.
almost have it all? I mean, I think that just to see how the best friends could have things come between them and like a John Lennon Yoko Ono Beatles type breakup is just heart-wrenching, right? So it's like you just want them to succeed and to grow up and top the charts and it's just a tale as old as time, I think.
I'm sure. Where was Jesse as well during this episode? Jesse was nowhere to be found in
Maybe
this
she's in
episode.
Las Vegas then too.
Or maybe she was on a break for
Yeah.
because of the caffeine pill situation. So
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know,
Maybe she was
but
dancing in Michigan. I don't know.
all of those are possible. But yeah, I I loved episodes like this where like Saved by the Bell sometimes had a penchant for doing like fantastical things
Hmm.
where you weren't sure if they were real or not. There were a lot of like
Hmm.
daydream sequences and fantasy sequences that still are used today
Yeah.
as tropes, which I always appreciate because I just did an episode with a couple friends about the show Scrubs, and
Hmm. Great show.
Scrubs uses that all the time. So for this
Yes.
episode to be
Yes.
something where Zach's just dreaming about what it would be like to make it big, the fact that he names the group after himself, like that's a very Zach Morris thing to do. Yeah, I love this episode. This is one of my favorite episodes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure for
Mm.
sure.
I think it's just I mean, I think it's so out there that it's fun, and I think it's so cheesy that you have to embrace it.
Yeah, very
And I
much
feel
so.
like we don't need to speak more about it.
That's
Although I
perfectly
can
fine.
appreciate, even if he's named it for himself, Zack Attack does have a good ring to it.
Oh yeah, for sure. It definitely works. Also, the fact that they're trying to like capitalize on bands and music, again, very 90s thing because
Hmm.
there were a lot of other shows at the time that were trying to do something similar. there's a show called like California Dreams
I was
that,
just going to say that used to come on after this, I think, or maybe it started right after Saved by the Bell stopped, right?
yep. So
That show was so cheesy.
it
Yeah.
was so cheesy, but it was trying to capitalize on what Saved by the Bell was doing, and it
Hmm.
just didn't work.
Did not. Sorry, California Dream fans, it did not.
Maybe
Exactly.
if they named it Indiana Dreams, maybe they should have started there first, but then moved to California. Maybe
Well
that was the
played, friend. Well played.
maybe that was the
Yeah.
problem. So,
All right. Should we
yeah,
wrap up season two, move on to season three?
let's do it.
All right. So I am going to zoom right past episodes 1 through 8 and just start with Fake IDs, season 9, The Attic. And
Ooh,
again,
yeah.
this is something that is still used in my everyday vernacular with my equally 90s loving husband. We, in fact, have an attic that you can climb up into where I store all of my kids' clothes. And when I say I'm going to the attic, my husband says the under 18 dance club, and I roll my eyes, but also love that he says that. My daughter, who is now 15, was recently telling me about some pop up New York City clubs for under 18. And my husband and I obviously call them the attic. I think that this episode was bringing all of the cheese that this show brings, but then also this whole concept of this teen dance club because they don't have fake IDs, or I guess they have fake IDs to say they're 18 or something. I don't even remember.
This so this episode was interesting because it caps off a interesting storyline with Kelly's new boyfriend, Jeff, who
Jeff.
Jeff broke up Zach and Kelly, which also, if you think about it, their relationship also ill, gross, because
College.
Kelly was a high school student, and
Mhm.
Jeff, who looked like he was like 35 years old, just scamming on a high school girl, plus also harassment.
Mhm.
Hello, like
Mhm.
person of power, which like I hate to say it, Kelly, like they wrote Kelly to fall into that trap time and time and time again, and it wasn't good. But their breakup was devastating when that happened. And then I remember the episode, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the Friends like the morning after episode where it's like, oh, like here's the residual effect of all
Yeah.
of this, where Zach and Kelly, you mentioned Romeo and Juliet earlier, how they had to read a Romeo and Juliet scene, and no, like not a lot of people knew that they broke up because this was pre-internet times, and you had to rely on word of mouth for stuff like that instead of seeing relationship status as now single on Facebook. So yeah, the core group of friends knew that they had broken up.
Yeah.
Everyone else had not yet,
The
including
nerds didn't know.
the nerds didn't know, the ditzes, the teachers, Mr. Belding didn't know. And I don't know, like them finally coming to the conclusion that they could be friends again in the span of one episode. Like, first of all, good for them, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But this whole saga was very interesting. And this fake IDs one, that's a good way to kind of just try to put a cap on this series or this particular storyline, which again, for a show that doesn't have a whole lot of storylines that span more than one
Yeah.
episode, this was a good way to end this one.
Yeah. 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 Jeff.
Ugh,
Jeff. Boo. A plague on
yuck.
his house. Okay. Anything between season 3, episode 1, and here that you want to discuss?
So according to IMDb, this is where a lot of the Malibu Sands
Mm-hmm.
episodes show up.
Mm.
So I'm not gonna. So there's two that I'll talk about. So the one that precedes the fake IDs episode, according to IMDb, it is the one where Zach and Stacey meet Stacey's boyfriend from Boston, Craig.
Brad. Oh, Craig. I thought his name was Brad. Okay, I apologize. Craig.
That's all
Yes.
good,
Craig.
but it's like Stacey, what are you doing? Like
Well, that was
why?
such East Coast, like upper class. Yeah, tomfoolery. Yep.
So, and then the other one is that the chess centric episode. So
Mm-hmm.
Screech is not exactly known for his athletic prowess
Mm-hmm.
per se. However, he is a very smart guy and he is a fantastic chess player, I guess. So this I think this was a nice way to give Screech a episode for himself, but also we have not mentioned once this like blood feud rivalry between Bayside and Valley High
Oh yeah.
School. I always found it hilarious, like base,
Hmm.
the coast and the valley, I we can't get any more lazy than
Commentary.
that
Hmm.
when
Hmm.
it comes to writing. But
Right.
this, the rivalry between the two was legendary. I guess that was the only high school in the area, but the fact that it even boiled down to chess as well, which
Hmm.
clearly they brought in a ringer for that. But I always enjoyed that episode too.
Yeah. And I don't think Valley had a really cool robot like Kevin, I'm just going to
No,
mention.
absolutely not. No.
Okay. Anything else, season three? Or do we move on? Because I have three words for you if you're ready.
In between the a pilot and the fake IDs episode, no. So go ahead.
Becky the Duck. Oh my God,
This
there's oil, and
this
all of
was
the
this
students
was
are going
a
to become so wealthy because of it.
the talk about a messaging school or message episode as well about oil and the plights of the environment, which I don't know. It was pretty effective because seeing
Hmm.
that duck and
Hmm.
seeing that the effect that it had on all those people.
Again, effective messaging, right?
Credit
And
where
this, for
credit is
those
due.
people, are season three, episode 11, Pipe Dreams. Yes.
Credit where credit is due with that because I think that presentation where Zach is, like spraying the oil on the nice fancy rendering of New Bayside, and then it gets on, like, it's either a school board member or somebody, like,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Oh, I'm covered in oil." It's like, well, at
Hmm.
least you're alive and at least you can clean it
Hmm.
up.
Do you
So
think he used that platform when he ran for governor?
probably, I could be wrong, but it's possible. Yeah, but I I always thought that this was an interesting episode because a number of series had episodes where they talk about oil. So
Mhm.
it was a big deal with the Beverly Hillbillies, which again, not part of this time frame, but there was a movie reboot that came out.
Hmm.
There was an episode of The Simpsons that talked
Hmm.
about oil as well. So this must have been a thing at
Yeah.
the time, but
Yeah. Dallas, of course. The whole show Dallas, right?
can't forget about that. So
Hmm.
this episode feels a little out of place at times, but
Hmm.
also again, effective messaging and also got you to care about the environment, which,
Yeah.
hey, we need more people to do that.
Yeah.
So
And I'm going to guess that this episode alone probably educated more people of the tween population about oil and the environment at that time than most of anything else,
yep.
right? Because you
Uh,
probably had no idea. And Lisa's walking around in her mink stoles and all of those things, because clearly, if there was oil on the school property, it would go to the students to become very wealthy,
obviously,
obviously. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And that poor duck, right? That poor
that
duck.
that poor duck.
All
Yeah.
right. So I'm going to skip ahead to 18 Palm Springs unless you have anything in between that, where I will tell my wonderful, very lame story of connections.
So briefly mentioned the Jesse stepbrother from New
Eric.
York.
Eric.
Yeah, this guy's a jerk, and we'll just leave it at that.
Although, nice shout out to Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah, whichever one they talk about. I
Yeah.
like that. I like that.
Absolutely. I will, echo that. And then the last one, the episode before the Palm Springs episode, the SATs, where Zach, really? Like,
Sure, why not?
yeah,
Unsung hero and untapped resource. And today they would say he probably had ADHD and dyslexia and wasn't able to focus, and that's why he wasn't good at any of his tests, right?
right, right. So this whole thing was very interesting because he ended up getting super high on the SATs, eventually
100,
getting
right?
him,
1500?
yeah,
Right.
eventually getting him accepted
Mm-hmm.
to Yale,
Mm-hmm.
Yale, or like getting him
Mm-hmm.
to apply to Yale,
Or
but
Stansbury, the Harvard of the
the
West.
Harvard of the West. Can't forget about that. But this was a storyline that came, or like the SATs becoming a thing. To me, this proves that standardized tests are ridiculous, and I appreciate that. But this also had Christine Taylor, who
Yes.
was in Hey Dude,
Yep.
and look at that. That's
Yep.
that's
Yep.
interesting. So
Yep. And I just want to say I didn't mean to mock anything with ADHD or dyslexia. I just meant to say that some
with
of these students now, when these things weren't diagnosed back then, and then they get great attention with their scholastic abilities, sometimes it's undiagnosed.
absolutely, it's all
Yes.
good. I
Okay.
totally understood what you meant. So,
Yes.
all right,
All right. Palm
Palm
Springs.
Springs, let's do it.
So We can talk about all the cheesiness of this episode. We could talk about Jesse's black top, white bottom, full skirt dress. We could talk about them running away on the golf cart in a golf or in the golf course in a golf cart. But what I will say, which my crazy, not very exciting connection is, this show was obviously very, very important to me at this time. And at this time, I don't remember precisely if it was right before the show or right after. I think it was right before the show. I went to Palm Springs with my family and we
Mm,
stayed at that Marriott. So when they had it on the show, I was like, I recognize this hotel. And I somehow researched it, which probably meant going to the library and looking in a card catalog.
nice.
But I found out that it was, in fact, shot at the hotel that I stayed at. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world because my favorite show was shot where I just was at vacation, on vacation. So that's my lame connection to the show.
I don't think that's lame at all. I think
Thank
that's
you.
awesome. So the rare two-part episode
Mm-hmm.
in Saved by the Bell lore, we throughout the course of the show, we met most of the kids' parents at some point. I don't know. This was definitely an interesting episode or episodes rather, and yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
a fun way just to
Yeah.
break up the monotony a little bit of the high school and just go with something that was really interesting.
Yeah. And speaking of parents, one of my favorite fun facts is that Zach's dad has two different names in the show. That's kind of fun. Derek and something else from one of the earlier episodes. And I feel like for some reason at this point, we should also mention Rod Belding, even though that's not his episode, but just to
Mm.
give a shout out to Mr. Belding's brother. Okay, so I would like to move on to episode 21, something we've alluded to throughout this. No Hope with Dope, Johnny Dakota. In one word, would you use dope? Nope.
Nope.
So, so this episode, just to give a brief synopsis, is this cool celebrity comes to school to shoot a video about not doing drugs, and then again, spoiler alert, he does drugs,
Hypocrite.
and he is macking, which is a '90s word on Kelly. And she falls for him, of course. And then she finds a doobie and then realizes it's his and then does not like that. And the video ends up, instead of being the great famous cool Johnny Dakota after his cool house party that all the teenagers are at, it is in fact Brandon Tartikoff, who we mentioned earlier, talking about how he's the head of NBC and he wouldn't do dope.
Yeah.
So again, a strong message for a younger kid being told that if you do marijuana, you will not get a teenage girl that's pretty that has a crush on you.
Yep. Yep. Important messaging,
Mm-hmm.
especially for the boys out there. This has kind of turned into like a little bit of a Facebook reel and like a TikTok type of thing where people say like have something and then it goes through the course of the video. Dumb,
Mm-hmm.
stupid, dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
stinks,
Mm-hmm.
all of that, which again, mocked now, but still,
Yeah.
I gotta
Message.
get
Message.
I gotta give them credit for
Mm-hmm.
going there with it because
Yeah.
it's interesting how they presented it. A lot to say about celebrity culture,
Yep.
I
A hundred
suppose.
percent.
Like, hey, you know, be careful of meeting those celebrities that you look up to because they're probably not all that they're cracked up to be, and
And this, I think, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
that's devastating. Like, that's a
Mm-hmm.
devastating lesson to learn.
So this, I think, is similar that we were talking about previously to like going to a mall to see something, right? So you only saw the guy, you would only see this teen celebrity heartthrob on the cover of Teen Beat looking all clean shaven and nice. And then, this Johnny Dakota house party episode where they're all doing dope is kind of like if they had Instagram back then and they showed themselves partying and you would be like, wait, what? He's not a clean cut celebrity? I'm shocked. So that was kind of like a behind the scenes episode to like the celebrity culture that you didn't know about. But I
Mhm.
would say, so would you put Johnny Dakota and Hot Sunday on the same level?
No,
No.
I don't think I would, mainly because Johnny Dakota feels like he's one of like the great villains of
Yeah,
Saved by the Bell.
I like
And
that.
Hot Sunday was was a pipe dream that was a catalyst for Jesse to, let's just put it this way. Johnny Dakota is a jerk and Hot Sunday is like the gateway to caffeine pill use. So
Yeah.
I guess they're similar in that way, but I would put Johnny Dakota, first of all, great name, but
Mhm.
just on a plane all to himself.
Episode impact, though, compare episode to episode impact wise.
I I don't know. I would say that the caffeine pill one probably had more of an effect because it directly impacted one of the core cast members. Whereas Kelly just, it's not like she took the drugs. She just
Mhm.
encountered somebody who did. So the messaging there was clear. Just say no, and you're good to go. But from an impact standpoint, it's still the Hot Sunday episode.
Okay. All right. So, do you have any other episodes in season 3 that you want to discuss, or do we move on, acknowledging Tori and talking about season 4?
I mean, we don't have to acknowledge Tori that much. So we'll briefly mention the Home for Christmas episode,
Oh, all of a
mainly
sudden, these people are working in the mall.
they're working in the mall and as a way to touch on homelessness.
Yes.
Uh,
Again, a very big message
very,
that they
very,
approach in a way that's approachable to tweens and teens.
yeah, from a messaging standpoint, that's fine.
And a two-part episode.
Another two-part like this season is
And
full of
another
two-part episodes.
and another episode where Zach and the girl whose name I can't remember with the long
Laura,
blonde hair, Laura, who
Laura,
looks a little bit like Blake Lively, kind of they're together forever now and you never see her again.
Yep, pretty much. I don't know. It's interesting because there I get it that the Christmas episode is definitely like a thing with shows, but like we didn't need I don't know, we didn't need this set during Christmas
No,
in
no,
order for us to shine a spotlight on homelessness.
right.
So I always found that kind of interesting. But again, just two-part episode, kind of interesting. There's a mall production of A Christmas Carol, which
Unnecessary.
completely unnecessary, but hey, it is what it is with
And a
that.
nice Scrooge tie-in with Mr. Mooney or whatever his name is. I don't remember the name of the guy that owns the store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I will give a shout out because this is also another guilty pleasure one. The Mystery Weekend episode
Oh.
where no, that is not okay.
No, we can talk about it.
I
It
will
just is
I get
another like
I guess
shooting of cheese that you.
I guess I will just leave it at that now.
No, you
So
can. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to invalidate your feelings about the mystery episode. We can discuss.
I'm ending the podcast right now. I feel offended, but no, it's all good. Like it's that one is just a shout out because that was one that I enjoyed
Okay.
and probably looking back, probably not so much because I also remember whenever that episode would come on, which it would come on a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's this one. Okay. So I will give a shout out to that.
It's like when any other show and every show did like a flashback to like the 1800s and all the characters were the current characters, but just playing their ancestors or something. It was one of those things where it's like, come on, come on. But I want to just go back and say something about the Christmas episode, not necessarily that, but the mall culture show. There was one other episode of them in the mall. I don't remember what season it was, and it wasn't so remarkable that I wrote it down, but where they find the money and then they're buying all the concert tickets. And I
Yes.
just want to touch on that for a bit to say that back in the olden days before the internet as well, when you wanted to buy concert tickets, much like when you wanted to buy movie tickets, you would have to call Ticketmaster on the phone and do off redial, hang it up, redial, trying to get through to get your concert tickets, where an operator would be like, well, I have section 150. Or you would have to stand online at a Ticketmaster booth, like at the mall, to get your tickets. And now you go on the internet, you go in your virtual queue, you go in your virtual waiting room, and then you can look at the whole map and then buy them. So just wanted to note how things have evolved since that as well.
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Good call. All right.
We move to season 4.
Yep. Let's
Okay,
do it.
so I do think that there are some pivotal episodes in this season, even though we know that there are some important people missing and some important, non-important people added. I will say one good thing about Tori, and this is just kind of funny. I remember reading, probably in Teen Beat, that I think she was either a twin or a triplet. And
Hmm.
on one of the episodes, her sisters are there, which is just kind of funny. Because usually these people would play their own twins, but I
Yep.
knew that she had other siblings, so I thought that was cool. That's all she gets. But we will say that when season 4 opens, this tough girl in a leather jacket rides a motorcycle and Park's taking Zach's spot, I believe. And, just the will they, won't they ensues from there. And
Yep.
yeah, she has hair like Jessie. She's kind of tough, but you know. Anyway, I would like to begin with episode 3, Screech's spaghetti sauce.
Really? Okay, not quite what I was expecting, but go
No.
ahead. The floor is yours.
Again, I think that this is an episode, much like Buddy Bands, teaching about capitalism and teaching, of course, somewhat about plagiarism, but along the lines, making another parallel with Friends to the Nestle Toll House recipe for chocolate chip cookies. I love making you laugh. Yeah, I just think that episode is funny because, again, bringing Screech some main character energy, which we love. But of course, also learning about how sometimes girls are only interested in you because you are rich with that girl. It was Punky Brewster, I think, right? It was
I believe
Soleil Moon
so.
Frye.
I
Yep.
believe so.
So
Yeah.
she, was only interested in Screech because of his tomato sauce empire. And again, much like the Becky the Duck episode, where clearly if there was oil found, all the students would be rich. Clearly if Screech in high school in a beaker discovers a tomato sauce, he would be the richest man in town. Yeah, so I feel like that's all I need to say about that episode. But I do feel also, you talked about Christine Taylor. I think the Soleil Moon Frye guest star was worth mentioning.
Yep. Okay. I don't have much to say about this episode, so
Okay.
good call out with that.
All right. You have anything, one or two?
Not one or two.
Okay.
The next one I would go to would be either episode 6 or 7 of
Hi, this is Nitro. Let's do episode 6, Teen Line.
the Teen Line episode was interesting because again, talk about a way that teens can talk about their problems. A teen line, really?
Mhm.
And this also had a somewhat okay message about ableism and
Mhm.
how we should be mindful and respectful of things like that. Never judge a book by its cover, type
Mhm.
of thing. So
Mhm.
I thought that was interesting.
Also showed a little bit of kindness from Zach, which is always nice to see, right? A little
Always nice to
empathy from
see.
our Zach.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything more about that?
Nope.
I would skip to episode 8 for a quick mention of Bonsai, unless you have anything else to say.
Nope.
Okay.
The really quick, the episode before the masquerade ball, again a Tory
Mm.
centric episode, but somebody dressed as Gumby, which
Mhm. Nice hug
again,
there. Mhm.
yeah, again aggressively 90s because Gumby was big in the 90s, even though Gumby
Mhm.
was an older, but
50s, right? I think it was originally from the 50s. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep. Nothing more need to be said.
no,
Okay. So Day of Detention, episode 8, I just think it's funny because Mr. Belding, who's the principal, all of a sudden becomes obsessed with bonsais. And every time I see a bonsai, which isn't so frequently, I think of that episode. And really just the idea was that Zach had to be in detention and they were in the max for some reason. I don't remember why.
I don't
Was this
remember
another
why.
radio station thing where they
I
did give away?
believe so, yeah.
I think we don't need to say anything more about that. Episode 9, Wrestling with the Future. One of my favorite lines still used today is I owe a Zach $10. Can you loan it to me? From Slater to his dad. And this is where our beloved jock AC Slater is looking into getting into different schools. And his father, of course, an army man, wants him to go into the military, whereas he has dreams of pursuing his wrestling. And he gets a full scholarship to Iowa and his doesn't want to tell his dad. And then it comes up in front of him because Zach mentions it, and just the whole concept of our dreams and what we want to pursue versus our parents' dreams for us. And that's all I need to say about that.
This is the perfect season to do it in because this is senior year, so had to make those tough decisions, and yeah, the good call out for that one.
Thank you. And my next, I would jump, unless you have anywhere to go, to episode 23.
I mean, yeah, we'd be remiss not to mention the drinking and driving
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Toga party and episode.
okay, a question: have you ever been to
Yes.
a toga party?
I have
They're
in college.
yeah, they're fine.
Yeah.
You know,
It was more, I feel like it was such a thing that when you actually went to one, you're like, now I've gone to one. I don't need to do this again. This was more complicated. I didn't have enough safety pins. Okay, I've checked it off my list.
yeah, yeah.
And
Pretty
yourself,
much.
have you been to one?
I have. So
Similar feelings?
yeah. So okay, so if you're going to episode 23, two that I'll mention very briefly: Snow White and the Seven Dorks, a rap version
Yes.
of Snow
Yeah.
White. Again, 90s choice. I did not like that they were going with the will they won't they with Jesse, but hey, it is what it is.
I feel like that episode too, much like Masquerade, is like upper level cheese.
Oh yeah. Well,
And yet again, a very big vehicle of the dorks to be portrayed as dorks and the nerds to be the nerds. And yeah.
yeah. And then the earthquake episode, which
Hmm.
yeah,
Or Becky the wife, not Becky the duck, gives birth.
yes, and Zach and Tori are the ones that have to deliver the baby. So good
Which
for them.
clearly I mean, they're absolutely okay to do that because of all of the training previously and, all of the hijinks they've gotten into.
I I don't see a problem with this. Like you
No, not
seem
at all.
like you do have a problem with it.
No, no, I'm
Like
joking.
like what are you talking about? Two high school kids with no prior training, no internet to
Mhm.
figure out what's happening, no way to call 911. What? Really?
But I feel like, and I don't know if this actually happened or if it's just in my mind, but I feel like if Bayside offered like an EMT class, I feel like Tori totally would have taken it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So I feel like I want to believe on a certain level that they're qualified to deliver their principal's wife's baby in an earthquake when they're locked
Mhm.
away.
Yep.
I want to believe that. All right. Can I start singing about Artie Boy?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Oh, Artie Boy, the bugs are buzzing. Episode 23, Slater's friend. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, we learn that Slater's best friend, no matter where he lived throughout the world, going around with his family, is a chameleon named Artie. And he lives in a shoebox. And much like your story about replacing the fish, he is a beloved pet who passes away. And everyone gathers together for a beautiful send off with some beautiful singing to Danny Boy. And it's just an episode that touches you to the heart. Anything more?
As somebody who wasn't allowed to have pets growing up because my mom was always afraid that she would be the one that would have to get saddled with taking
Mm-hmm.
care of them,
And
and
she was right.
probably rightfully so. Yeah, this did hit.
Mm-hmm.
Any show that showcases a pet and the pet dying will always get to me. So
Yeah. No, and I mean, I joke, but like, I think that this show also, much like we said, talking about bigger themes coming out, this was dealing with the loss of a pet. And it is a true, thing to think about that Slater was in all these different schools. And, as he said previously, it was hard to make friends. And this one chameleon was his constant. So I mock, but I also understand that he lost his best friend. And even though after 4 years we never heard of this best friend before, it still doesn't diminish the fact that he lost his pet and was upset about it. And the
yeah,
song was just beautiful.
yeah.
All right, moving on. Unless you have anything, 24, 25, it's time for these kids to graduate and look back.
I think it's time to graduate and also being mindful of the time as well.
Yes.
So I
See
think
how
good
we round
timing.
that all together?
Yeah,
So graduation, I just remember when they were like previewing. I don't, was that a two-part series? Was that a two-part one?
it was
No.
not.
Okay. I remember them doing commercials for that on NBC and like having chills, being so excited and feeling like that was such a big deal. And then finally sitting to watch it and just like being thrilled that the original people came back and that we don't know where they were, but all of a sudden they graduated with their class.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like I still get chills just thinking about the culmination of their high school hijinks.
Well, and this episode also it kind of encapsulates a lot of different things that there's a time capsule episode, there's a video
Mm-hmm.
video
Time
yearbook.
capsule to 2003, which I was dying at when I was looking.
Yeah, that kind of bums me out, but hey, it is what it is with
Because it
that.
was 22 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
you cut me
I,
real
I
deep with
stuck it
that
right in
one.
there. Yep, yep,
So, and then there was a couple clip episodes as well
yep.
that kind of had the end. So, fitting way to end this series. And
Hmm.
also, I kind of like the fact that like they ended with graduation because too many shows they try to go beyond graduation and it just doesn't work. And
Like the
granted,
Spy Choose
this show does that, but in its own separate series,
with different
um,
haircuts.
and aggressively like late 90s
Oh, yeah.
everything.
Vamp. Yes, yes.
So I will give them credit for, hey, 4 years, like let's just leave it at graduation. Let's just call it a day. Because
Yeah.
shows struggle to make that transition or they have a spinoff for that. But
Hmm.
the fact that this ended like this, good for them.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say that I agree with everything you said. And also, when they started the college years, I felt like there definitely was this leave them wanting more, and I wanted more. And then I was happy that the college years came. I think that the college years, and again, we spoke about the merits and the pitfalls of the college years, but I think at that time I wasn't ready to say goodbye to Zach and Kelly, so I was happy that NBC was not ready to say goodbye to them as well. And then I think that's all we need to say about the college years. And then I don't remember if we said this on or off camera about the last scene on the boat before it pulls out to semester at sea. Were we recording at that point?
I think so. Just
Okay.
remind us again if you.
Just in case, I will say from all of the craziness that comes out at the college years, my favorite scene is in the end, of course, setting up the layup for Zach and Kelly's wedding, where Kelly is about to leave for a semester on semester at sea, which I thought was a very cool thing for them to tie into the show in itself. And Zach runs onto the boat and professes his love to her, and I believe proposes. And then that leads us to the special edition Zach and Kelly's wedding that ends the whole series perfectly. And that is on, I wrote the date down here, October 7th, 1994, Wedding in Vegas, which of course is filled with all kinds of cheesiness. But we get to see our beloved Zach and Kelly walk down the aisle and bond together in holy matrimony. Another type of graduation, if you will.
Oh, very, very
Yes,
nice
yes,
way to do that.
yes. Thank you.
All right. The only other thing that I will very, very briefly mention is the Saved by the Bell Hawaiian style, the
Yes.
1992 TV movie. It's considered a TV movie,
Mm-hmm.
so that's
Mm-hmm.
funny. And I'll just leave it at that because I'm just acknowledging its existence. That's
And
all.
Kelly's grandpa. Yes.
Sure. Yeah, that we never see ever again. So, any final thoughts on Saved by the Bell or anything that you want to kind of wrap up with in terms of its legacy for pop culture, its legacy for you?
I think that when I started showing the show to my kids a couple of years ago, I feel like I show my kids a lot of 80s and 90s movies and TV, and they either jump right in because they think it's great and it's funny, or they think it's like the slowest moving, cheesiest thing. They can't even get through half an episode. They actually were really into this. And I thought that was funny because I think that even though at this point it's so anachronistic and it's so cheesy and it's so campy and it's so like grunt worthy, it's still the whole concept of these like teenagers getting away with all kinds of funny things and so ridiculous. Like we didn't even talk about the episode where Zach was selling the class rings that turned everyone's finger green. But like
Mhm.
it's funny because these kids are given such power and they clearly take the school and run the school, and that's just funny in itself. And I think that that concept is timeless and resonates funny, and you can make fun of the cell phones and you can make fun of different things that they have, or the computers on all of their desks that are gigantic blocks of plastic. But I think the core concepts are really touching and heartwarming, and like the ones that we talked about, like they have undercurrents of like real messages in them, and I think that that resonates with kids in any generation. And I think also like it was fun, like you and I talked about, now buying movie tickets twice. And I think that these things are fun starting off points to talk to our kids about how it was when we were younger, even though that makes us sound like we're 300 years old. But it's just funny to say to your kid, who, when the kid says, I want to go to the movies, and you go boop, boop, boop on your phone, great, we have tickets to, next Tuesday's thing, and we have seats and all that. It's just funny to talk to them about like how it was when we were their age and how it was so vastly different. And I think I always like sentence starters when you're trying to tell your kids things and you're trying to have conversations with them relating the age you were to the age they are now. And
Mhm.
so I think that that is kind of like a nice thing that Saved by the Bell does.
I would largely echo those sentiments that
Hmm.
to me this is like a it's a time capsule show because it's aggressively 90s. There there are problems with it just like every other show of the
Hmm.
time as well. However, if you take it at face value where you you felt like you had a group of friends that you could hang out with,
Hmm.
you know, to me this feels like a little bit of a precursor to the show Friends
Hmm.
because as they're going through high school and you're seeing some of the hijinks that they're getting
Hmm.
into, it kind of is a way for me personally at least that it kind of preps you for what high school is going to be like.
Yeah.
And even though this isn't at all what high school was like for
Right.
me, I still enjoyed it. I still had a lot of
Yeah.
fun. I still, it talked a lot about different topics that I wasn't expecting a show
Mm-hmm.
like this. So
Mm-hmm.
the heavier episodes, they did hit. They were,
Yeah.
they did have effective lessons. But I just, for me, Saved by the Bell will always be a show which, but we haven't mentioned this yet, but just has a kick-ass theme song,
Oh yeah.
like just a great theme song and a great cast,
Animation. Yeah.
a great animation, aggressively 90s
Yes.
as
Oh
well.
yes.
And for me, it's going to be a show that I'm going to look back fondly on as a show that is just a very important part of my childhood,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I can't thank that enough
Yeah.
for it.
And two things that I would add. I would say, and I'm watching My So-Called Life with my daughter right now, who turned
Ooh,
15 on Monday.
ooh,
And I was
ooh.
like, on the night of her birthday, I'm like, I have waited 15 years to watch this with you. And so I said, very much like, Claire Danes, I think the cast of Saved by the Bell, even though they've all, for the most part, minus Lisa Turtle, gone on to all these different, probably much more famous things than the show they did as teenagers in the 90s. I think the first line of their obituary will be Saved by the Bell's ex passes away.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to leave with, and this is just another little fun fact in my life that was exciting. I met Tiffany Amber Thiessen once, and we were at an event together, and she ran up to me and gave me a hug and said, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long. How are you?" And I was like, "I'm great, Kelly Kapowski. How are you?" She obviously thought I was someone else, but that was a very exciting moment. She was absolutely lovely. And I would love to come to her table if she's listening. If you'd like to have me on one of your cooking shows, I'm available. But
Very nice.
she was just so nice, and she's someone that has had such a wonderful career where she was on this show, then she was on 90210, like she was on major 90s shows, like good for her. And then she became this like awesome mom, and now she has a cooking show. And I just think that she's just super cool, which sounded very dorky, but I think she's awesome. I kind of want a cardboard cutout of her holding a volleyball in my house, but
Forgot that that cardboard cutout was a volleyball.
Oh yeah.
Was her watching or her playing volleyball.
Oh
To piggyback off of that, Mr. Belding came
yeah.
to my college. He was the MC of our homecoming pep rally, which
Whoa.
I thought that was always really fun. I got to meet him. He is
That's so
a
cool.
lovely individual. Very very appreciative. He got the crowd jazzed up, and like he wasn't, like he knew why he was there. He was there because everybody grew up with Saved by the Bell at the
Yeah.
time. So
Did
yeah,
you bring a bonsai?
no, he did not.
Okay. Well, I think we need to end on that note.
I can't think of a better way to end on that note. So, Stacey, thank you very much for coming back on to talk
Yes.
Saved by the Bell. Do you have anything that you want to plug, and where can the people find you?
So people can find me on my blog, The Mint Chip Mama, and the website is dot the mint chip mama, and mama is mama.com. And across all socials at the Mint Chip Mama. And I will tell you that on both my blog and my platforms, I talk a lot about the 80s, I talk a lot about the 90s. I have two posts, one of them the best family movies to watch from the 80s, one of them the best family movies to watch of the 90s. The 90s one, going along with the whole resurgence of this 90s nostalgia, has been trending out of control. And even though I wrote it several years ago, I update it regularly and has been my number one post in 2024 and consistently for 2025.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and I attended 90s Con last March and hoping to go again this year, and that's a lot of fun. And just, I love that this whole 90s surge is coming, and just, all of us middle-aged people now are going back to our youth and the simplicity of it all. And I think that even though things are moving so fast today, we can still bring a little piece of the 90s into our home and into our families, even with all of the technology going on.
Very nice with that. So appreciate it. I will be having you on again for 90210 talk at some point, and then even to talk about My So-Called Life, because that was
Yes.
a very important show, particularly for my sister, and I appreciated that show. It didn't connect with me the same way, but watching it back now, it's like, oh, this show is saying a lot, and
And as the person who watched it as a child and now watching it with my child as the mom and watching poor Patty going through all these things and my daughter looking at me and awkwardly laughing, and I'm like, oh, I get
You
it.
are the worst.
Yes.
Um,
Luckily, we have a much better relationship than Angela and Patty have, but watching it from her eyes, seeing it, it's weird when you watch things that you grew up with and then you more commiserate with the parents of the show than the teenager of the show, right?
yep, those
Identify, commiserate, yes.
yes. It always breaks my heart a little bit when that happens, but also at the same time, it shows that hey, I'm growing up and I'm seeing
Yep.
things from different perspectives, and that's always important. So,
Yeah,
well,
absolutely. But I would love to come on and talk to 90210. I equally have a box set of DVDs of that I can hold up for your audio audience to not see. I do not
no.
have a mug though. I do not have a mug.
Oh, well,
Seems
that's
like I have some time to get that taken care of.
all right. That works. So, Stacey, thank you again, and looking forward to chatting with you more.
Yes, thank you.